Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Muslim for you tiada one year is the slogan. I would like you to be in touch with me by sharing this video and also subscribing to my YouTube and my Facebook and my TikTok platform. We are having a beautiful conversation today too, and today we're about to discuss the position of historians with regards to whether Islam was spread by the sword or it wasn't. I am Yuti Adawa. This platform is a beautiful platform where we'll be bringing you beautiful lectures each and every time, inshallah. So we hope you subscribe, and we are also reminding you of the project that Call to Guidance is doing by helping the poor and the needy and supporting them with exercise books so that we can avoid school dropout, at least in Africa, by getting each student a 10 exercise book, 1 maset, and then 1 shoe in order to eradicate school dropout in the system. Most of the poor cities in Africa are having school dropout due to these petty things. I would love you to share this video till it reaches everywhere. Let's talk about the positions of historians, whether Islam was spread by the sword or not. In the end, was so Ebekabe. In fact, the whole show was concocted by certain group of Christian apologists in the 19th century. They were the ones that propagated such lies that Islam was spread by the sword. But today we'll be going to detail to discuss some of these things, whether it is true or it is false. Most of these things were, propagated by anti-Islam polemics, mostly European Christian anti-Islam polemics, who for centuries has been propagating this. One of them is Sir William Muir, who was a British colonial official or an active Christian missionaries who took part of this campaign to deceive people that Islam was spread by the sword. I would like you to stay in touch with me. However, even in the ranks of the Orientalists, there were those such as Thomas Arnold and De Lacy O'Leary, Thomas Carlyle and others, Dr. Joseph Adam Pearson and others, who did not agree with such opinion from them, who they actually chopped away at the narrative of the false conversion of Islam. You understand? O'Leary wrote in 1923 that the legend of the fanatical Muslims sweeping through the world and forcing Islam at the point of the sword conquered races is one of the most fantastically absurd myths that historians have ever repeated. Even though he being a Christian, he differed to this opinion. Another renowned historian who is called Marshall Hodgson, and his pioneering work, The Venture of Islam, in which he articulated essentially the same position. He said, more recently, I.R.A. Lapidus wrote in the History of Islamic Society that European scholars believe that conversions to Islam were made at the point of the sword, and that conquered people were given the choice of conversion or being killed. But it is now apparent that conversion by sword, while not unknown in Muslim countries, was in fact very, very rare. Muslim conquest ordinarily wished to dominate rather than convert. They wanted to dominate instead of converting people. And most conversions to Islam were voluntary. I did not say this. It is coming from most of the historians. Note this very, very well. The Quran itself says in Quran 2 verse number 256, that la ikraha fi din, there is no compulsion in religion at all. There is no compulsion in the religion. And the renowned classical mufassir, or a commentator of the Quran, Ismail ibn Kathir, around 1373, said that this passage means do not force anyone to become a Muslim, for Islam is plain. For Islam is plain and clear, and its proofs and evidence are plain and clear. Therefore, there is no need to force anyone to embrace Islam. If anybody is feeding people out there that Islam forced people to embrace Islam, the person is a liar and has been propagating lies all along. You understand? Muslims have a collective responsibility to share their message of Islam to people, but normative way to do this, in which Quran 16 verse 125 says, ادعوا إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة وجادلهم التي هي أحسن. That has been the teachings of Islam from day one. Even in the case of Islamic wars or sanctioned wars, Muslim armies were supposed to offer non-Muslims the choice of conversion to Islam, payment of jizya, and acceptance of zimmi status, or trying the fortunes of war. Let me explain to you very carefully. If you convert to Islam, you can choose to convert to Islam, you are free to go. You either pay your jizya, you are free to go. And then you can choose to do the acceptance of zimmi status. That is, you become a fortunes of war. You be conquered and you become a fortune of war. Now, if the adversaries chose the last of these three and then lost, they face exploration. That is, before the battle, you are to choose. If you win us, we either pay jizya to you, or we become your slaves, or we will convert to Islam. If you are won, you choose one. But if you choose the last one, then you become a slave or even face the penalty of death. However, they must not be converted forcibly. These were the laws of Islam. Now, let's cross-check the early Islamic history. One of the most famous treaty between the Sophronius, the Patriarch of Jerusalem, and the second Muslim Caliph, which happened around 644. The Caliph's name is Umar ibn Khattab, in which we're about to give us a beautiful example of Dhimma agreement, in which others say it's which forced conversion was explicitly forbidden. In fact, I'm pasting this history on the screen for you so that you read it yourself, inshallah. This is the assurance of safety, Aman or Amana, which the servant of God, Umar ibn Khattab, the commander of the faithful, has given to the people of Jerusalem. He has given them an assurance of a safety for themselves, for their property, their churches, their crosses, the sick and healthy of the city, and for all the rituals which belong to their religion. You've been hearing people say Muslims came and forced Jerusalem to embrace Islam. They came, they killed people. People, stop lying. The histories are there. Stop the fabrications, brothers. Their churches will not be inhabited by the Muslims and will not be destroyed, neither they nor the land on which they stand, nor their cross. Not their property will be damaged. They will not be forcibly converted. Subhanallah. Omar is generally regarded as having been one of the most stringent Muslim leaders. And Jerusalem was a very important city for Muslims. It could be expected then that if the early Muslims were so keen to forcibly convert people to Islam or non-Muslim to Islam, Omar certainly would not have made an exception for Jerusalem like this. Similarly, there is a similar example which has scattered throughout Islamic history during the agreement in the 713 century between Abdulaziz ibn Musa and Theodemir that took place in Spain. You understand? This has happened. This lot of things like this has coalesced among the matters of religion. The churches will not be burned, nor will their sacred objects will be taken away from them, nor will they be forced to embrace Islam, nor will they be punished or be killed. This has been happening. That of Jerusalem and that of Spain. It was in part due to set protections that for at least 2 centuries, the majority of the inhabitants of the Islamic Empire were non-Muslims. Furthermore, according to Hugh Kennedy, forced conversion to Islam was almost impossible. Hugh Kennedy said this. He said, forced conversion to Islam was almost impossible. You understand? As Muslims were a small minority in newly conquered areas, perhaps about 10% of the population in Egypt and 20% of the population in Iraq. So how do they force people to embrace Islam? Unless you are lying, unless you want to deceive people, you want to throw dust into the eyes of people. In the regions conquered by Muslims by around 732 in the 1st century after the Prophet ﷺ, Islam did not become a majority religion until 850 to 1050. Nearly all of Iran, for example, had been conquered by 705. However, empirical research by Richard Bullitt has shown that it was only in the mid-9th century that the Muslim population of Iran reached 50%. If we were forcing people to embrace Islam, how come we didn't force all of them to embrace Islam? And it took nearly another century for that figure to hit 75%. As some historians have pointed out, if forced conversion to Islam had been the impetus behind the conquest of Islam, then they had a miserable failure. But that wasn't the intention. That was never at all. Let's stop lying to people. Again, it has also been argued by a lot of historians that far from forcing a Muslim to convert to Islam, many Muslims, many Islamic rulers, many Islamic caliphs actually preferred to rule over non-Muslims and collect jizya from them. One reason for this was that the zakat charity that is obligatory upon Muslims, collections were often redistributed locally in the provinces and could only be used in certain ways. But the jizya was sent to the central treasury and the capital was paid in cash and could be used at a ruler's discretion. One of the relevant cases to the Umayyad general Jarrah ibn Abdullah al-Hakim around 730, being removed from his post by the Caliph Umar ibn al-Aziz. Al-Hakim had been ruling in Khorasan and actually prevented a subject from embracing Islam and continued to demand the jizya even from those who converted to Islam, and that is the reason why he was removed from there. You understand? And so Umar ibn Abdul Aziz removed him from his post, saying Allah sent his messenger Muhammad as a preacher and not as a tax collector. That's the message. So Islam did not come to force anybody or intend to force people to by forcefully embrace Islam. Not at all. Again, there is another scenario where conversion could be effectively discouraged for other. That's forced conversion could equally be discouraged for other reasons and in other ways also. An example is that of Haidar ibn Qaus around 841 AD. A general of the Abbasid Caliph Al-Mu'tasim and a ruler of a small principality in Central Asia called Ushrusana. Though he was a Muslim, he had made an agreement with his non-Muslim subject to not permit dawah within Ushrusana. He was a Muslim and a ruler, but he said they shouldn't permit preaching in Ushrusana. And he kept his word with them. punishing two Muslims for preaching in his jurisdiction. He punished two Muslims for preaching. And people go outside there and lie to people that Islam came preaching to people, preaching to his Nananum that they should stop worshipping idols. Meanwhile, you don't know the history. He doesn't know Islamic history. Haidar ibn Qaus had to punish two Muslims for preaching to idolaters. He then faced trial for doing this in Mu'tasim's court. All this have went on. It has gone on. There were certainly cases of false conversions to Islam in the course of history, but these were often far more complex and I would say nuanced than the reductionist and willfully misleading spread by the sword as people has been claiming. It is never true. We need to be honest with ourselves. I don't say some were not, but not all of them. In fact, majority, 90% were not. Study the Ottoman Empire's Devshirme system. The Ottoman Empire, the Devshirme system, is another example of forced conversion to Islam. In this system, young Christian boys were systematically taken from their families and then converted to Islam and trained to serve in the empire's bureaucracy or in the Sultan's personal military force. The Janissaries, however, this same system often provided religious minorities with unfettered access to the highest governance positions. An example is that of Sokolu Mehmet Pasha in 1579, a slave from Bosnia who rose through the bureaucracy to become the Empire of Grand Vizier, a position from which he was able to support Bosnia's Christian community, though he himself remained a Muslim. Thus, the same Devshirme system that forcibly converted some non-Muslims to Islam could at times also play a role in preserving non-Muslim communities and protecting them from mass forced conversion. This may in part explain why Islam proceeded so slowly in some part of the Ottoman Empire, the region that makes up modern-day Albania. Example was gradually conquered by the Ottomans over the course of the 15th century, but conversion to Islam only really took off nearly 200 years later. How about Yemen? And so forth and so on. So let's stop the lies, the fabrications, the interpolations that we've been feeding people, that Islam came to force people to embrace Islam. That is a lie. It has always been a lie, and it will continue to be a lie. I think we will end this episode here. At the right time, we shall drop another episode. In conclusion of the matter, the preceding case studies we've presented you examples of forced conversion to Islamic history, which is very minute. And even when they were forced, they were given the mandate later when they grew to protect the other religion from being dominant Muslim. They preserved their people, even they themselves were Muslims, but they preserved the other faith, the Christians and non-Muslims, to propagate their religion, and they stopped them from being forced to embrace Islam. You understand? In battles and in conquest of armies, in fact, mistakes do happen, but it has never been Islamic monopoly. Muslims have ruled 800 years in one of these countries, Spain, and we did not force anybody to embrace Islam. We ruled about 1,000 years, 800 to 1,000 years in India. We did not force anybody to embrace Islam. We came to Africa. We did not force anybody to embrace Islam. So when you are lying to your people, know how you lie and stop deceiving people. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ladies and gentlemen, Zana Company Limited wo. In fact, uwe goodie, uwe copper, uwe silver, uwe gold. Our person will say no. When electroplating, when baby ako against Zana Company Limited, uwe goodie, person won't understand your pay. When the silver chain, when the golden chain, when the golden ring. Then o person when you know Zana be say no e dia ma. In fact, one organize sports, open cup and open medals be that to omukomu. Zana Company Limited bet to me e dia ma. Any kind of jewelry at all. Zana Company and ye wan adwuma. Zana e wa hemfa. Hwe Zana e wo Nungwa behind Fidelity Bank. Raviko e ho and Zana e wo. Number 7 fra Zana 0240 481 568 0240 481 568 and 0248 42 44 93 0248 42 44 93. We are Henny, we are Penny, we are Goody, we are Catesia, we are Bogger, we are Golden Chain, or a wrist banner, or then a one, a gold, copper, silver, a jewel in Quadia. When person yensiese no famo biara no ye betumi aye ede ama enti contact Zana Company Limited na omamwa inshallah enua nyina be wo so Annabi Muhammad Sayyidun Annabi Muhammad Adin Annabi Muhammad Muhudin Annabi Muhammad Muqaddam Annabi Muhammad Azizun Annabi Muhammad Fadilun Annabi Muhammad Mufaddilun Annabi Muhammad